Charles Dickens, The Use of Fiction to Campaign for Social Reform. How can a tale spun from the fabric of fiction alter the stone-cold reality of societal norms? Good day, my dear listener. I am Charles Dickens, and today I shall unravel the thread of fiction and its potent role in campaigning for social reform. Throughout our discourse, I shall take you through the corridors of my own experiences and works as we examine together the transformative power that lies within the pages of a well-crafted story. In our first lesson, let us consider the heart of any societal reform: empathy. To touch a heart, you must first show it what it has never felt. In my own life, I have endeavored to expose the plights of the poor and the oppressed through characters that live and breathe within my pages. Do you recall Oliver Twist, my dear friend? A boy born into a world that cared not a whit for the blood in his veins nor the tears on his cheeks. It was through Oliver's innocent eyes that many first saw the squalor of the workhouse, the terror of the criminal underworld, and the possibility of kindness in such a bleak world. Now, why would a gentleman of comfortable means concern himself with the miseries of a workhouse child? It is because I myself knew hardship and toil from a tender age. When my father was imprisoned for debt, I was thrust into a factory, laboring for a pittance. These experiences were engraved upon my soul, and from them, I drew the conviction that no child should suffer indignities and that society must be called to account for its failings. Click subscribe to this channel to get more profound lessons from the legend. Through characters like Oliver, I did not merely present a problem but humanized it. I gave a name, a face, and a story to the suffering. It is through such personal tales that fiction can stir the dormant empathy within a reader's breast, urging them to not just observe but to feel. And feeling is the precursor to action. But how does one turn feeling into action? This brings us to our second lesson, the illustration of injustice. Fiction's role is not merely to entertain but to inform. When I crafted A Christmas Carol, it was not enough to merely condemn Ebenezer Scrooge for his miserly ways. I had to show the chain of societal neglect that bound the figure of Tiny Tim to an early grave. Through Scrooge's transformation, I sought to inspire the reader's own. His journey from indifference to compassion is a blueprint for readers to follow, a call to look beyond their own interests and to extend a hand to those in need. In every chapter, I endeavored to hold up a mirror to society, not to simply showcase its reflection, but to reveal its cracks. It is through the recognition of these cracks that society can begin to mend them. Now, I pose a question to you. Have you ever considered the invisible chains that bind the unseen hands which toil for your comfort? This question is not meant to induce guilt, but to awaken consciousness. It is what I sought to achieve with Hard Times, where I depicted the dehumanization wrought by unchecked industrialization. By presenting these social ills through a narrative, I provided a digestible means for my readers to grapple with complex issues. As we move to our third lesson, let us discuss the catalyst for change, the call to action. Fiction does not merely highlight wrongs, it must also show the path to making them right. In Bleak House, I did not just criticize the interminable legal machinations of the Court of Chancery. I implored readers to seek justice, to not be idle bystanders to corruption. It is not enough to shine a light on darkness. One must also kindle the flame of progress within the reader's soul. Finally, in our fourth lesson, we shall speak of hope, the beacon that fiction must keep alight. For what is a story without the possibility of a better tomorrow? Great Expectations is not just a tale of rags to riches, but a narrative rich with the potential for redemption and personal growth. By instilling hope, Fiction assures readers that their efforts are not in vain, that change is within reach, and that their actions can contribute to a brighter future. In each of these lessons, we see the meticulous structure of how fiction can advocate for social reform. We touch the heart through empathy. We open the eyes with the illustration of injustice. We move the hands with the call to action, and we inspire the spirit with hope. Now, I shall leave you with a question to carry in your heart. What injustices in your time are waiting for their storyteller, their champion, their voice in the wilderness? Remember, no one is useless in this world who lightens the burdens of another. And with that, we shall conclude the first part of our discourse, the alchemy of words, transforming societal indifference into compassionate action. As we venture further into the intricacies of fiction's power to advocate for social reform, we discover the subtle alchemy that turns the leaden apathy of a society into the gold of compassionate action. Our second lesson delves into the art of crafting narratives that do not merely inform the intellect but also galvanize the will. Consider, if you will, the plight of the children in my novel, Oliver Twist. The stark depiction of Oliver's struggle in the workhouse and his entanglement with Fagin's band of pickpockets was not intended merely to entertain, but to instigate a fiery dialogue on the conditions of the poor. The narrative was a lens, focusing the diffuse light of public attention into a burning point upon the dire need for child labor laws and poorhouse reforms. It was a call, not to the courts of law, but to the court of public opinion, where each reader was both judge and jury. Why then do you suppose I chose the medium of fiction over a treatise or an essay? It is because stories possess the unique ability to bypass the guardian of reason and speak directly to the heart's inner chamber. An essay may compel the mind, but a story compels the soul. When the soul is stirred, action becomes not a choice, but an imperative. In this lesson, we also examine the potent force of relatability in narrative. In David Copperfield, autobiographical in essence, I presented a character with whom many could identify, a young man wrestling with the challenges of growth, identity, and perseverance. By sharing a common ground with the reader, the story becomes a shared experience, a joint struggle. It is through this shared struggle that indifference is shed, and the urgency of reform becomes a personal crusade. Now let me ask you a probing question. Have you ever seen yourself in the pages of a book and found your own struggles reflected in the plight of its characters? It is this reflection that narrows the chasm between the reader and those whom the story seeks to champion. Let us turn now to the third lesson, the power of contrast in narrative. In A Tale of Two Cities, I juxtapose the opulence and decadence of the French aristocracy with the abject misery of the peasantry. This stark contrast was not employed for mere dramatic effect. It was a deliberate device to highlight the grotesque inequality that precipitates revolution. It is within the human condition to grow complacent, to accept the world as it is presented. Yet when a narrative draws back the curtain and reveals the disparity between what is and what ought to be, it can shock the moral sense out of its lethargy. It is this shock, this awakening, that spurs the reader to consider their role in either perpetuating or challenging the status quo. For the fourth lesson, we explore the narrative as a rehearsal for reality. When I penned Nicholas Nickleby, I exposed the wretched conditions of Yorkshire boarding schools. The story served not only to decry these institutions, but also to empower the reader, providing a vicarious experience of fighting against such injustices. It is through such experiences that fiction equips the reader with moral courage, the courage to confront and rectify the wrongs they encounter in their own lives. Now, as we conclude this part of our discussion, I invite you to mull over this. How often do you allow the tales of others to influence your actions and beliefs? Remember, the most important thing in life is to stop saying "I wish" and start saying "I will." Consider nothing impossible, then treat possibilities as probabilities. Echoes of truth. Narratives as beacons for a just society. As we embark upon the third segment of our exploration, we delve into the profound responsibility of the writer as a torchbearer for truth and justice. This is the lesson of the echo. How the truths we weave into fiction resonate through the halls of society long after the last page is turned. In my own life and writing, I have always believed that literature should serve a purpose beyond mere entertainment. With each character I created and every plot I devised, my intent was to leave an echo that would reverberate against the walls of complacency and comfort. The echoes of the truths I presented in my novels were designed to linger in the mind and soul, prompting a relentless questioning of the world as it is. Take, for example, the character of Joe from Bleak House. In his brief life, marked by neglect and misery, Joe is a stark embodiment of society's indifference to the destitute. His repeated phrase, "I don't know nothing," is not just a comment on his own lack of education, but an indictment of a society that allows such ignorance to fester. It is a simple yet powerful echo that, once heard, is difficult to silence. I entreat you to consider this. When last did the echo of a character's plight or the moral of a story cause you to pause and reconsider the world around you? The power of narrative to echo within us is a testament to its enduring ability to effect change. Now let us proceed to the heart of the echo, the characters. In creating figures such as Ebenezer Scrooge or Pip, I did not simply conjure individuals. I fashioned vessels for the vices and virtues I sought to examine. Scrooge's transformation from a miserly curmudgeon to a benevolent figure is an echo of the potential for change within us all. It is an affirmation that no one is beyond redemption, and that personal change is the first step towards societal reform. In this lesson, we also touch upon the narrative as a historical document. Stories, while fictional, can capture the essence of an era, preserving the struggles and triumphs of a time. My novel, Hard Times, serves to record the dehumanization that the Industrial Revolution brought upon the working class. It is an echo from the past, warning future generations of the perils of valuing progress over people. Let us consider, too, the manner in which narratives can echo through the chambers of legislation. After the publication of Oliver Twist, there was a notable shift in the conversation surrounding the poor laws and workhouse conditions. The story echoed in the halls of power, shaping the perceptions and, eventually, the policies of those who wielded influence. As we draw to a close on this segment, I leave you with another question to ponder. In what ways do the echoes of the stories you have read still resonate within you, shaping your thoughts and actions? Remember, there is nothing in the world so irresistibly contagious as laughter and good humor. The echoes of truth are not always somber. They can also be joyous and invigorating, reminding us of the beauty and goodness that we are striving to protect and proliferate. Are you prepared, my astute fellow, to proceed to the final lesson in our literary congregation? Empathy Unveiled, the quintessence of literary legacy. In the concluding chapter of our odyssey through the transformative realms of literature, we reach the core of our discourse, the enduring legacy of empathy that great stories bestow upon their readers. This is the quintessence of storytelling's power, the ultimate gift of fiction, to plant the seeds of empathy in the fertile soil of the human heart. Throughout our journey, we have seen how narratives serve as mirrors, reflecting societal ills and personal foibles. Yet, above all, they are prisms, refracting the singular light of our experience into the many hues of human emotion and understanding. In the pages of a poignant narrative, we live 1,000 lives, and from each, we derive the empathy necessary to appreciate the vast tapestry of human existence. The empathy that blossoms from engaging with characters who are unlike us, whether by circumstance, morality, or social standing, is the very empathy that dissolves the barriers between us and them. In Great Expectations, the journey of Pip is not merely a tale of personal ambition and remorse. It is a masterclass in the vicissitudes of human nature. It teaches us that empathy is not just a passive feeling, but an active engagement with the world. Let us consider the impact of such engagement. When we empathize with characters, we practice understanding and compassion. This practice extends beyond the confines of the book. It influences how we interact with our neighbors, how we vote, and how we advocate for change. It is the legacy of literature to instill this empathy within us. Now ponder the literary figures that have lingered with you long after their stories ended. It is no coincidence that they often embody the struggles we see around us or within us. They compel us to confront our prejudices, challenge our assumptions, and extend our sympathies beyond our immediate circle. This is the silent work of literature, to continually expand the circumference of our empathy. This final lesson is about the resonance of empathy in the real world. The stories I've penned, from A Christmas Carol to Little Dorrit, were not designed to be fleeting diversions but lasting impressions that shape the reader's worldview. They are calls to action, crafted to awaken the dormant empathy within and to inspire a more compassionate society. As we bid farewell to our literary exploration, let us reflect on the transformative nature of reading. Each book we consume, each story we immerse ourselves in, contributes to the collective consciousness of our world. It is through the act of reading that we allow ourselves to be shaped, subtly yet surely, by the empathy that literature nurtures within us. In closing, I invite you to carry forth the lessons learned and the empathy cultivated in this journey through the annals of narrative power. Remember, no one is useless in this world who lightens the burdens of another. And so, with a heart fortified by the empathy of countless narratives, you are now entrusted with the torch to illuminate, to warm, and to unify. Are you ready, my enlightened friend, to be the bearer of this legacy, to ensure that the echoes of empathy resonate through the ages?